Welcome to the MYBcast, a channel offering podcasts devoted to the art and science of somatic touch therapy. Somatic touch therapy is an alternative for self-care that recognizes the important role the body plays in our day-to-day life. We are fascinated with the mind-body connection, and so are the people we talk with. From pioneers who helped to originate or develop this work, to seedlings of somatic mindfulness who have adopted principles of this work in their massage practices, our guests will uplift, educate, and inspire you. Thanks for joining us. Please like, subscribe, and share. Now let's join our hosts.
Hello, and welcome again to Portraits of the Pioneers. I'm Anna Marie Bowers, and I'm co-hosting with Richard Mack, who will introduce our guest for today. Richard?
Thank you, Anna Marie. And today I have a very, very dear friend that's joining us, Dr. Fernando Rojas. Dr. Fernando Rojas started our Traeger training together and met each other actually in a Traeger class in Princeton, New Jersey at one of Betty Post's class, which Gail Stewart was teaching a level 2. And that's when Fernando and I kind of met each other, and that was at least 15 years ago. And I'd like to bring him back into the spotlight. So, Fernando, welcome to Portraits of the Pioneers.
Hello, happy to be here.
Great. So maybe we'll start with just that. You came into this work. I met you through the Traeger organization, but I know that you've been doing massage work and other modalities before that. Maybe we'll start with a very simple question. How did you get into bodywork?
Sure. Well, the why I got into bodywork specifically was more of an interest in deepening my relationship with yoga and to have other ways to be useful to my family. Basically, my kids were really young at the turn of the century. And so I am originally trained in design, but I had a parallel life, you could say, in yoga and body work. And so my initial introduction to formal training for body work was in a modality called Osho rebalancing, which is it's a mix of Rolfing and the Traeger approach.
Interesting.
It has a meditative context, which is what attracted me from it. So really what those explorations were at the beginning was really all about that. You know, what does that mean for something to be meditative?
So tell me a little bit about that. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Richard.
My question is that's interesting because you were attracted to Traeger, but coming through Traeger through another modality that was marrying two different modalities together. What attracted you to that?
Yeah, it's so I didn't know anything really about Traeger. I had heard of Rolfing. It was more commonly known, I guess you could say. But really what the training was, it was in a setting, you know, like a retreat setting. It brought a lot of other interesting concepts like Gestalt and other, you know, and other ways of bringing the client more into the therapeutic context as such. And but the reason that I ended up in the Traeger training, was a fairly practical one, because I really liked, you know, in my experience with whatever I knew about Traeger from that initial training, they called it Osho joint release. And that aspect of it seemed to me like that it was the one way that you could see more permanent results in clients. And so I moved to New Jersey in 2010, and that was right around the time when the conversation started about certifying and licensing body workers. And so I was teaching, and I needed to get registered and certified, and I needed CEs. And so I was very curious about Traeger, so I started training in the training track just to get my CEs for licensing. The cool thing about that, and what I kept saying, was that I thought that the meditative so if you think about it in bodywork, when you talk about meditation or a meditative component, it is not a passive approach; it's an inaction approach. And so the more that I learned about what Milton Traeger meant, in my opinion, the more that I saw that the inaction component of the meditative aspect of what I learned was mostly from what Milton said. And so I stayed interested, and I went through the whole thing.
You're speaking about presence with the client?
Yeah, so the language can vary. So presence is one way of approaching it. Mindfulness is another one. Now, with the whole thing around somatics, and when you pick it apart, you see that it's really all referring to the same thing. And so what started to me as a meditative component, unquote, has transitioned in language to use terms that are accessible for communication, which are now more around somatics, and in my case, somatic mindfulness.
Yeah, thank you for that. I hadn't heard meditative component put together in that way before, and I resonate with that. It's that pause, that presence, that exchange back and forth with the client and the practitioner in the moment, in the present moment.
Yeah, and the cool thing about it is that when we take the time and we look around and we read a little bit about what the research says, especially around mindfulness, there are these applications that are in action, right? Like there's a woman, her name is Ellen Langer, who is a tenured faculty in Harvard, and she has a line of research that is known as socio-cognitive mindfulness, which is same thing, is mindfulness in action, and so, or meditation in action. And so there is plenty of research that supports it. And also there, on the other side of things, you have people like Thich Nhat Hanh, who wrote about mindfulness in action as well. And so my interest, my curiosity then from the early 2020s to here has been just to see what is it that we are talking about, and how is it that we can bring it into simple language so that we can have a conversation around.
And how does that influence what you're then teaching now? Are you developing language as you're teaching, as you go? Do you find yourself evolving with your practice, I guess, is kind of what I'm asking.
Definitely. So, and evolving is a good word. My curiosities, let's say 2003, 2004, were around what I've been saying is the meditative component. Mm-hmm. From that, and then being exposed to Milton Traeger's words and teachings, that was less that is less, I guess you could say, evocative in the terms of philosophy and so on and so forth. And it's more practical, right? And so, can we pause for a moment?
Sure.
Yeah.
Whoops.
All right. So we're talking about the evolution of my work and what I'm doing now. And I was trying to sort of recount just to see what my thought process was, right? And mm-hmm. and so we could say that it's the meditative component that I was attracted to. started to become more practical, when I started to aim to understand what Milton Traeger was trying to convey with, he had a word for it, had a term for it. And so again, like presence, like mindfulness, he called it hookup, and so what is it about this thing, especially when it starts to become practical, then what is it really that we're talking about? And so as I went through the training, and now as I've been teaching for many years now, I think I would summarize it as a process of distillation, which is a word that a good friend used, and I'm repeating Madalena Ferrara. She used the word distillation, right? What is that? It's like, let's really distill what's happening in this relationship between two human systems, yeah, involving the therapeutic context of touch and this meditative component, this mindful component, or now what we're calling the somatic component, which what I have done then is I have brought it to a point where I understand it clearly. I have a way, a set of principles, so to speak, that to which I contrast any idea that I get, or any answer, or any question I get in a class, to see if the principles stand. And then in classes, what we have is what I call the analytical component, where we can talk about, how do we define things, and then the experiential component, which is sort of like the lab. It's like, okay, if Milton said something like this, if Thich Nhat Hanh said something similar, if Ellen Langer is saying something similar, let's put it to the test. Let's take what Thomas Hanna described as somatics. Let's come up with a simple exercise that includes touch and a certain way of paying attention that we could say is mindful. Let's put it to the test. Let's see what results we get. And the results that we have seen are interesting, are useful, are impressive.
That's fascinating. And I love the fact that it feels to me, as you're speaking, like your work is evolving as your understanding is evolving as well. And so the students in your class are going to have the same experience of taking what you've given them and furthering their understanding as they go on.
That's important. That's very important, because what this has become, right, is not the new modality that has this, list of things that you have to conform to. What this has become is permission for everyone to come up with their own unique way. A participant once called it your own unique gift. Discover it, verbalize it, have a way of understanding how is it that you show up, what is your purpose, and then bring clarity to that. So what somatic mindfulness is doing is it's saying, let's inspire you, for you to come up with your own idea, for you to come up with your own way, bring language around it so that you can go change the world, like Milton said, one body at a time, in your own way, not in the way that I tell you.
Exactly, because we all are unique and we all have a unique gift. We all have a unique skill set, and it evolves and it changes through time.
Yeah, and if you think about it, that's what Milton did. People who came after Milton, like, my beloved teacher, Dean Juhan, he evolved the work in his own way. He wrote about it. He speaks about it in a very, particular way that is just his. And he even talked about an evolution of it that he called resistance release. And so I think this is the nature of how these things work, right? The lineages work like that. It is expected that things evolve and become a new thing instead of a static 1, 2, 3 thing that everybody has to follow.
Well, sure. If you just look to the nature on our planet, that's the way the planet is. That's the way living things are. Nothing is static like that. So that certainly follows. How did your I just want to shift a little bit, and I know we only have a few more minutes left in this episode, but I just want to ask you about your background in design. Do you feel there's some connection there with the thinking process? I'm just curious, the thinking process or the strategies or anything about the design that influenced your understanding or your thinking or your curiosity about body work and anatomy and those kinds of things?
Certainly, and more is design thinking a part of my classes. I sometimes make these big statements like through the body. We create the conditions with this somatic approach. We create the conditions for healing, right, to arise, and not that we cause it, not that we do something, and I'm going to just throw this in for a moment here. The one way that this is different from other modalities is that these are not technique applications. This is something that could be summarized as conversations. And in design, it's the same thing. Design is what is called a solution-focused approach, not a problem-focused approach. And so it is always about iteration. It's always about staying open. And I say that in the same way that we create the conditions for healing, what we would consider healing of a body, like body elements and so on and so forth, from that same place arise ideas. From that same place arise creativity. From that same place arise clarity of purpose. And so I am, in a very direct way, saying that what we do, our work through the body, encourages all of those things that go from healing to getting new ideas, to getting clarity, and to getting into getting a deep sense of purpose. That's why discovering what our unique gift is part of this. It is also you could say a design component of the process. So yes, very much so.
Hmm. And I would add to that the idea of creating something from nothing is pretty much what we're doing with the work. I mean, we go in without any intention other than to connect to that person that's on the table and to be able to reflect what's going on there. We don't start at the feet and end with the head, and we don't do these 17 different movements, and we don't do this, we don't do that. We in tune to what's happening with the person that we're working with. And that's what a designer does as well. The ideas come to them and they create from those designs.
I agree. And so we create the conditions for these things to happen.
Yes.
And we discover that they happen. We don't claim that we all of a sudden have, a handle on either energy or healing or getting this great. And nobody sits down and says, well, I'm going to have an idea now, or I'm going to be inspired. No, you get inspired, you get an idea, right? And so what we get good at is creating the conditions for that. Mm-hmm. And so that is that's the whole exploration that we engage.
Is yes. that where you came up with where you utilize that term attuned touch? Is that the idea that you are meaning by that word attuned?
Yeah, well, attuned touch has a very specific meaning in this work, but yes, it is very much influenced by that. But it honors what I call creating the conditions, right? And one way to create the conditions is by honoring some of what Milton Traeger said. You got to have it to give it. So attuned touch is touch that is informed by my inner state. And so the quality and the action of my touch is informed by my inner state. Very much in line with what Milton Traeger used to say.
Here's a random question for you. If the general public wanted to know what can they do to grow their own sense of their own inner state without doing, courses in meditation or anything like that, is there some simple exercise or idea that you would suggest people could do to begin to become aware of their own inner state?
I love this question, and I do want to express something around that. But I have to stop, go downstairs, and come back.
We will take care of it when we come back.
And I just want to say this, where he's going, if you're ever looking for a beautiful Airbnb on the Atlantic Ocean on Puerto Rico's north coast, Vega Baja is a wonderful, wonderful place, and Fernando has an Airbnb there with a couple of facilities there, and he's going down to welcome a guest. So when he comes back from welcoming his guest, we'll have him sit down and tell us more on episode 2. So we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
Bye-bye.
So we're back just to end the episode 1, and I did have a little bit of a cliffhanger there, and that is that Fernando was meeting some of his guests that were coming into his Airbnb. Fernando has 2 Airbnbs right on the north shore of the Atlantic Ocean in Puerto Rico, and they're available on Airbnb. So Fernando, how could they find your beautiful rooms and apartments that are available?
Well, that's very kind of you to say. Yes, they are right on the shore. The name, I guess, the easiest thing would be to put the link on the show notes. But if you go and find Vega Baja, you might see it, but you don't know whether it's mine or not. There's 300 of them here, but this one goes by the name Blue House, which is B as in boy, LUHAUS. So Blue House PR. It's like the German way of saying it. No reason for that. It was just a cool name. And so that's how the link would look like. Airbnb.com. Then it's /H/Blue House PR.
And having experienced this property and staying in the Airbnb, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I highly recommend anybody that's looking for a winter getaway. Puerto Rico's sunny and warm. So I'll end this episode number 1, and we'll have you back for episode 2. So thank you.
My pleasure. Look forward to it.
Thank you for joining us at MYBcast. We hope you found the stories inspiring. This series has been made possible by our hosts, our production team, and our guests, whose willingness to share their personal stories is vital to educating the public about the power of somatic touch. We're all contributing to creating positive change. Thanks to our sponsors, Mind Your Body, the Foundation for Somatic Touch, and Somatic Mindfulness. Find them on the web at myb.llc. foundationforsomatictouch.org, and somaticmindfulness.co. Please like, share, subscribe, and join us again for more interesting, compelling, and heartful stories.